I think one of the outcome of this project, one is to create the the advocacy lens. So through education, community engagement, policy development, the writing, also the cultural and artistic expressions and programming. We hope to create the awareness and also to advocate for women and girls' well-being in the Delta, because we find it very important and also timely to go along this route. And also these projects, as should be mentioned, all these resources will be provided for educators, policymakers, future researchers to understand the need of the region. So through this is what we hope the outcome of this project will be. So briefly, we will touch on individual project that is currently underway, and then we will open up for discussion. So briefly, my colleagues will talk about their individual project.
Thank you, Faisal. So, hello everyone. Thank you for giving me the chance to sharing my research with you all. So, the title of my research is Black Women's Self-Help Activism in the Arkansas Delta, Local Heritage Global Resonance. So, the study will basically explore the rural Black women's community activism in the Arkansas Delta. The rural Black women with their outstanding and transformative leadership, they worked for their community in the context of health, human rights, and social justice. And this study will explore these women's activism and how they contributed to the holistic health and community development of their society. So for doing this research, I have taken Mrs. Gartha Bailey-Trice as my case study. Because Mrs. Gartha Trice devoted her life to work for her community, to work for the Arkansas Delta, and she was also known as the daughter of Delta. Mrs. Trice was born in Garrett Group, Lee County, Arkansas in 1927. This is the time, it is just prior few years of the Great Depression. So Mrs. Trice's first half decade of her life just passed by observing this reality, the poverty in her society. And might be this helped her to engage with such activism. So how Mrs. Trice contributed to the society? Mrs. Trice established the Lee County Self-Help Project, which is LCSHP, in 1965 in Moro, Arkansas. And she, in 1969, the Lee County Cooperative Clinic was established, and Mrs. Trice started to work as a Amelie Corps Vista worker AD in the Lee County Clinic. And her motto of working was that if you can help one another, you are basically helping yourselves. So within this motto and within these two organizations, she basically contributed and worked for the community. So her organization, the LCSHP, became non-profit organization in 1980, and there was reason behind this designation. So within the help of the Winrock International Foundation, the Hairfire Project International, the organization basically able to collect cattle and then distributed this to the destitute families. The organization also helped to the needy families and the families who want to do the livestock operations, Her organization also contributed to creating the employment for the young generation of the Delta community. She was also the member of the Cooperative Extension Service. Within this service, she managed toys, clothes, and household accessories. And then she was able to distribute these accessories and toys to the needy families. Her organization also worked for the transportation of for them, basically for the elderly people in case of their health emergency. And Mrs. Trice got lots of awards for her such kind of activities. So in the next slide, I will try to show how this Black women's self-help activism is connected with the human rights, health, and the cultural heritage. So human rights basically, truly speaking, in United States, human rights basically is the symbol of the civil rights, but civil rights doesn't go as far as human rights, because human rights basically work for the creating systematic change for the society, and these rural women always work for that systematic change, and that's where their activism is basically the human rights activism. And these are also connected with the holistic health support for the community. My colleague already mentioned, if we see the healthy definition from the World Health Organization, that health is not only disease or infirmity, but it's the holistic physical, mental, and social well-being for the people and of the community. So in that sense, these women worked for their holistic health, development of the holistic health for their community. And in such way, these rural women are the invaluable, intangible cultural heritage. So this research will try to promote, to extend this rural women's self-help activism across cultures. So in that way, this study will focus on to safeguard this rural women's self-help activism as an intangible cultural heritage policies. And in such way, the study will explore the activism, like the national and the international organizations who are currently working on this agenda. And I think this is the one way we can recognize and honor these rural women, basically in the women who are in Arkansas. And thank you so much for listening me. And Dana, you may proceed.
Thank you, Sweetie. As Sweetie mentioned, the headquarters of the wonderful Miss Gertha Bailey Trice was a small town in Lee County called Gary Grove, Arkansas. And that happens to be not only the focus of my own research, but also the town of my ancestors. They were former slaves from Mississippi, and they joined a growing group of other former slaves some from Arkansas, some from other places in the South, and they end up settling in this small community and establishing their own town. So it fits right into what we're trying to do with the Arkansisters Project, because as Gertha Bailey Trice is a prime example, this community exhibited a very well-taught self-help tradition. And so I think that is a thing that I think it's important for us to kind of tease out. Of course, we know that the Delta is full of trauma, has a traumatic past in history, but there also are histories and tradition that came out of the Delta that, in spite of the trauma, that they were able to help each other and their communities grow. So this rich tradition is going to be something that we study. Just a quick, if you go back to the previous slide, just quickly, it was established sometime between 1891 and 1903. It had 2 churches, a cemetery, grocery stores. Many of the farms were self-owned by the African-American community. They were very active in civic organizations, sometimes founding their own organizations like Mrs. Trice, fraternal orgs, and politics. They also raised funds with their own communities and other communities. And the men and women played very active roles in activism, human rights, and the health and well-being of each other. So it just fits in line, I think, perfectly with the Arkansisters Project. And so I look forward to see where we go from here. Shelby.
So for my dissertation, the big themes I'm looking at heritage tourism and economic development in the Arkansas Delta. And the way I'm looking at it is creating a heritage map and not a trail, which because of the overused nature of that phrase, heritage trail, and there are golf courses named heritage trail. So I'm going to call it heritage map, where people can decide virtually where to go. And it's a map of women's individuals and organization throughout history in the region, particularly in the last century, that look at that highlights the heritage map will highlight organization and women in the region, and it's basically an examination of the existing cultural tourism landscape in the region, which has its unique challenges, because most of cultural heritage tourism literature focuses on big sites, and even when it talks about small places, it's untethered to reality, as it like when most of the ideas, creating a museum that will cost several $100,000 to build, and then building a community around it, which is very simplistic in its ideas when it's written, but on the ground it's a much tougher thing to put into practice. So I look at the existing tourism infrastructure and then create a heritage map, and then also heritage programming that goes alongside creating this heritage map, which will be virtual when I finish my dissertation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobi. So briefly, my project, which is not as advanced as my colleagues Donna and Sweetie. This is my project will be focusing on cultural workers and heritage sustainability. One of the themes that I hope to achieve with this project is to looking at resilience, how the community is being able to cope with this traumatic past, and also how they are dealing with it in the present. So I'm more focused on the now, the happenings in the communities. But my research will be focused on Elaine. As we know, Elaine Elaine can be seen as a traumatic landscape with its infamous massacre that happened in 1919, and that has continuously that history continuously shapes or has continuously shaped the landscape to date. So my focus, my research will be looking at how cultural workers who I consider as individuals with the agency to change, to effect some form of change, whether grand or small, they are doing things with their agency to effect changes in the communities. And I look at changes in terms of systemic, how they engage in individuals and also community as a whole to bring about well-being, community well-being that directly or indirectly also affect the individual. So my research will be looking at the historical aspect of it and also the temporal, what is, like I said, what is happening now, in order to investigate the novelty that cultural workers bring to Elaine. Thank you very much. And from here, we open up for questions, suggestions, ideas, and discussions. Thank you.